Welcome to Crime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us. If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us. Patriots' Day in Boston. A day of celebration, a marathon, a symbol of resilience. But in 2013, this festive atmosphere would be shattered, irrevocably altered by an act of terror that would sear itself into the city's memory. We're going to dissect the events of that day, the lead-up, the aftermath, and the painstaking investigation that followed the Boston Marathon bombing. It's a story of loss, of courage, and a complex web of factors that led to this horrific event. We'll begin by setting the scene, painting a picture of Boston on that fateful day, before the explosions ripped through the air and changed everything. Imagine the vibrant energy of a marathon. Thousands of runners, their families, spectators lining the streets, cheering, holding signs. A collective sense of accomplishment and joy hanging in the air. It was a beautiful spring day, a perfect backdrop for this iconic race. But beneath the surface of this festive occasion, a sinister plot was about to unfold. 2 pressure cooker bombs, packed with nails and ball bearings, were strategically placed near the finish line, hidden in plain sight amongst the cheering crowds. In the next hour, we'll delve into the moments leading up to the detonation, examining the seemingly ordinary details that would soon transform into a nightmare. The finish line, a symbol of triumph, a place where runners achieve their personal victories. But on this day, it would become a scene of unimaginable carnage. The first bomb detonated at 2:49 p.m., sending a shockwave through the crowd, instantly transforming the jubilant atmosphere into one of chaos and terror. Seconds later, just a block away, the second bomb exploded, compounding the horror and confusion. The sounds, the smoke, the screams. We'll examine the immediate aftermath of the blasts, the heroic actions of first responders, and the desperate search for answers amidst the devastation. The initial moments were a whirlwind of confusion and panic. The streets, once filled with cheering spectators, were now strewn with debris and injured victims. Amid the chaos, stories of incredible bravery began to emerge. Runners who crossed the finish line and immediately ran back to help, medical personnel rushing towards the blast site, and ordinary citizens putting their own lives at risk to aid the wounded. We'll hear first-hand accounts from those who were there, piecing together the fragmented memories of a day that forever scarred the city of Boston. Less than / person 1 greater than, less than person 1 greater than. Before the tragedy struck, the city of Boston was vibrant, full of life, and brimming with the anticipation of spring. The Boston Marathon, a cherished tradition, was a symbol of the city's resilience and its people's unwavering spirit. The air was filled with the sounds of cheering crowds, the rhythmic pounding of runners' feet, and the joyful music echoing from the surrounding bars and restaurants. The aroma of hot dogs, popcorn, and freshly brewed coffee mingled with the crisp, cool air. Families lined the streets, their faces painted with excitement, waving flags and holding signs to encourage the runners. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a positive energy that permeated the entire city. It was a day meant for celebration, a day to witness human endurance and achievement. No one could have foreseen the darkness that was about to descend upon this joyous occasion, forever staining a day meant for unity and celebration. Indeed, the victims of the bombing, like 8-year-old Martin Richard, represented the very essence of this vibrant community. Martin, with his infectious smile and bright eyes, embodied the innocence and hope of a generation. He was a typical Boston boy who loved playing sports, especially baseball and soccer. He was known for his kind heart and his gentle nature. On that fateful day, Martin was standing near the finish line with his family, excitedly waiting to cheer on his father, who was participating in the marathon. He held a homemade sign, a testament to his unwavering support and love for his father. His 2 siblings and his parents were also near him, sharing in the excitement and anticipation. Little did they know that their lives were about to be irrevocably altered in a horrifying instant. The carefree atmosphere of the marathon was shattered, and the innocence of childhood was stolen away in a flash of violence. Crystal Campbell, a 29-year-old restaurant manager, was another life tragically cut short. A native of Medford, Massachusetts, Crystal was known for her vivacious personality, her infectious laughter, and her unwavering dedication to her work and family. She had an energetic spirit and a genuine warmth that drew people to her. Crystal was at the marathon that day with her best friend, cheering on the runners as they crossed the finish line. They were sharing a moment of joy, capturing photos and videos to commemorate the day. Crystal was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend, and her absence left a gaping hole in the lives of those who knew her. Her story, like Martin's, became a symbol of the senselessness of the attack and the profound impact it had on the community. Lu Lingzi, a 23-year-old graduate student from China, was pursuing her dreams at Boston University. She was a bright, ambitious young woman with a passion for statistics and a deep love for her family back home. Lu Lingzi was a dedicated student, known for her intelligence, her hard work, and her unwavering commitment to her studies. She was described by her friends as kind, gentle, and always willing to lend a helping hand. On that tragic day, she was watching the marathon with two friends, taking in the excitement and energy of the event. Lu Lingzi's journey to a new country, filled with hopes and aspirations, was abruptly ended, leaving her family and friends devastated. The loss of this promising young life served as a poignant reminder of the global reach of terrorism and the indiscriminate nature of its violence. Let's rewind to the morning of April 15, 2013. A beautiful spring day in Boston, as the city was alive with anticipation for the 117th running of the Boston Marathon. Runners stretched, spectators gathered, and the air buzzed with excitement. It was Patriots' Day, a state holiday in Massachusetts and a day of celebration. Families lined the route, waving flags and cheering on the athletes. The weather was ideal, sunny, clear, and a comfortable temperature. Street vendors sold hot dogs and lemonade. Children held handmade signs for their favorite runners. Everything seemed ordinary, a snapshot of a perfect day in a vibrant city. Nobody could have predicted the horror that was about to unfold, the way this ordinary day would be forever etched in memory, not for its celebratory spirit, but for an act of unimaginable violence. Yes, it was a day that started like any other marathon Monday. The race began as usual, with elite runners setting a blistering pace. The crowds thickened as the morning wore on, especially near the finish line on Boylston Street. This area is traditionally the most crowded, the place where runners achieve their ultimate goal and are greeted by cheering loved ones. Many families position themselves near the finish line, eager to capture the emotional moments of victory. There were news crews, photographers, and general spectators jostling for the best view. It was a scene of pure jubilation, of human endurance and community spirit, a microcosm of the city itself. And within this teeming crowd, a terrible plan was about to be set in motion. A disruption to the ordinary, masked by the very normalcy of the day. Looking back at the footage, the day almost seems to have an eerie, unsettling quality, knowing what's about to happen. It's almost as if you can sense a shadow lurking beneath the surface of the celebration, a subtle disruption to the rhythm of the day. Witnesses later recalled a sense of unease, a feeling that something wasn't quite right, though they couldn't put their finger on it. Perhaps it was the unusual weight of backpacks some individuals were carrying, or the way they seemed to linger near the crowded areas without engaging in the festive atmosphere. These details, seemingly insignificant at the time, would later take on profound significance, becoming crucial pieces of the puzzle in the investigation that followed. The marathon itself continued according to plan, with runners crossing the finish line in waves. The first bomb detonated at 2:49 p.m. near the finish line on Boylston Street. The explosion ripped through the crowd, sending shrapnel, smoke, and debris flying in all directions. The scene instantly transformed from one of celebration to one of chaos and terror. The initial moments were filled with confusion and disbelief. Many people thought the sound was a celebratory cannon or a malfunctioning piece of equipment. Then came the realization that something truly horrific had occurred. The second bomb exploded just seconds later. Further down the street, compounding the carnage and amplifying the sense of panic and fear, the day that had begun with such promise, with a city united in celebration, was now irrevocably stained with tragedy. The shadow in the ordinary had revealed itself, and the city of Boston would never be the same. In this segment, we delve into the harrowing events of April 15, 2013, the day of the 117th Boston Marathon. It was a Patriots' Day, a state holiday in Massachusetts, and the marathon, a cherished annual tradition, drew a large crowd of spectators and participants. The atmosphere was festive, with people lining the streets, cheering on the runners. Around 2:49 p.m., near the finish line on Boylston Street, the first of two pressure cooker bombs detonated. The explosion sent a shockwave through the crowd, creating immediate chaos and confusion. The blast ripped through the air, scattering debris and leaving a scene of carnage in its wake. The initial moments were filled with screams, smoke, and the unsettling silence that often follows such devastating events. The first bomb exploded near Marathon Sports, a sporting goods store at 671 to 673 Boylston Street. The force of the explosion was powerful enough to propel metal fragments, nails, and ball bearings outwards with tremendous velocity, inflicting severe injuries on those nearby. Witnesses described a scene of sheer terror, with people scrambling for safety, some carrying the wounded, others desperately searching for loved ones amidst the chaos. The immediate aftermath was a blur of activity as first responders, police officers, and medical personnel rushed to the scene. The area quickly transformed into a triage zone, with the injured being treated on the sidewalks and transported to nearby hospitals. The magnitude of the attack was still unfolding. Just seconds later, approximately 12 seconds to be precise, the second bomb detonated further down Boylston Street, near the Forum restaurant. This second explosion added to the already overwhelming sense of panic and confusion. It became immediately clear that this was not an accident, but a deliberate act of violence targeting innocent civilians. The two bombs, detonated in close proximity and within a short time frame, were designed to maximize casualties and inflict the greatest possible damage. The second bomb, like the first, was packed with shrapnel to enhance its destructive capacity. The selection of the Boston Marathon as a target was undoubtedly strategic. The event draws a large international crowd and holds significant cultural importance for the city of Boston and the nation as a whole. An attack during such a prominent event ensured maximum exposure and amplified the impact of the violence, both physically and psychologically. The timing of the explosions, near the finish line when the crowd was at its densest, indicates a calculated effort to inflict the greatest harm and create widespread fear and disruption. The use of pressure cooker bombs, packed with shrapnel, demonstrates the perpetrator's intent to maximize casualties and inflict gruesome injuries. These details paint a grim picture of a carefully planned and executed attack. The explosions ripped through the festive atmosphere of the marathon's finish line, transforming a scene of triumph into one of carnage. The initial reaction was disbelief, followed by panic and confusion. The air, once filled with cheers, now carried the acrid smell of smoke and the chilling cries of the injured. Runners who moments before had been striving for personal bests were now scrambling for safety, some helping carry the wounded. The first responders, police officers, medical personnel, and even bystanders rushed towards the blast sites, working frantically amidst the chaos. The enormity of the event, the sheer unexpectedness of it, left a palpable sense of fear and uncertainty hanging over the city. The immediate aftermath was a blur of sirens, screams, and a desperate search for answers. The bombings weren't just an attack on individuals. They were an attack on the spirit of the city, on the very idea of a public celebration. The marathon, a cherished tradition, a symbol of resilience and community, was forever scarred. The images of bloodied pavement, discarded running shoes, and abandoned belongings became etched into the collective memory. The fear was immediate and visceral, spreading like wildfire through the city and beyond. People were afraid to gather, afraid to celebrate, afraid of what might come next. The bombings created a sense of vulnerability, a realization that even in seemingly safe spaces, tragedy could strike without warning. The city went into lockdown. Businesses closed, schools were shut down, and public transportation came to a standstill. A sense of unease permeated the air, every car backfiring, every loud noise sent shivers down people's spines. The streets, normally bustling with activity, were eerily deserted. The fear was compounded by the unknown. Who was responsible? What was their motive? Were there more attacks planned? These questions hung heavy in the air, fueling the anxiety and uncertainty. The city held its breath, waiting for answers, waiting for some semblance of normalcy to return. The manhunt that followed was unlike anything Boston had ever seen. A citywide lockdown was implemented, effectively turning Boston into a ghost town. The streets were deserted, businesses shuttered, and residents were ordered to shelter in place. The image of heavily armed police officers patrolling empty streets became a stark symbol of the fear that gripped the city. The constant updates from law enforcement, the appeals for information, the grainy surveillance photos plastered across every news channel, all contributed to the growing sense of unease. The city was on edge, waiting, watching, and wondering when, or if, the nightmare would end. Let's delve deeper into the Tsarnaev brothers' psychology, particularly Dzhokhar. He was a seemingly well-adjusted college student, a wrestler, and described by some as popular. He was known to smoke marijuana occasionally, But there weren't any glaring red flags that indicated a propensity towards such extreme violence. Yet, the evidence points to him playing a significant role in the bombing. This apparent contradiction between his outward persona and his actions is a crucial piece of the puzzle. Understanding his motivations and the potential radicalization process he underwent is essential to comprehending the tragedy. We need to consider the influence of his older brother, Tamerlan, and any other external factors that might have contributed to his transformation. It's a complex psychological landscape we're trying to navigate here. Absolutely. The dichotomy between Joker's public image and his alleged involvement in the bombing is baffling. Reports suggest he continued his routine activities, going to the gym and attending classes, even after the attack. This seemingly nonchalant behavior in the aftermath is deeply disturbing and raises questions about his emotional state and the extent of his commitment to the ideology that supposedly drove him. We need to consider the possibility of coercion, the dynamics of the brotherly relationship, and whether Joker's participation was entirely voluntary or influenced by his older brother's dominance. Examining the psychological profiles of both brothers, their individual vulnerabilities, and the potential influence of extremist ideologies are crucial for understanding this complex case. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit played a crucial role in piecing together this puzzle. It's also worth noting the apparent lack of a clear and consistent motive. While investigators explored various avenues, including potential ties to radical Islamic groups, the true driving force behind the attack remains somewhat elusive. This absence of a readily identifiable motive further complicates the psychological profile. Was it political? Personal? A combination of factors? These are the questions that continue to plague investigators and continue to fuel public speculation. The online pronouncements discovered after the fact offered some insights into their beliefs, but they don't paint a complete picture. We need to look beyond the surface and attempt to understand the deeper psychological currents that led to this act of terror. The chaotic nature of the bombing itself, the use of pressure cookers packed with shrapnel, suggests a certain level of desperation and perhaps a nihilistic outlook. The choice of the marathon as a target, a symbol of civic pride and unity, further underscores the apparent desire to inflict maximum physical and psychological harm. This brutality contrasts sharply with Joker's reported demeanor and social interactions. Understanding this disconnect is crucial for piecing together a coherent narrative of the events and motivations leading up to the bombing. It also raises important questions about the challenges of identifying individuals who may be harboring extremist beliefs and planning acts of violence. The clues were scattered, the signs subtle, and the true extent of their radicalization remained hidden beneath the surface. Let's delve into the chaotic aftermath of the bombings and the initial stages of the investigation. Remember, this was a scene of utter devastation. Amidst the smoke, debris, and cries of pain, first responders were trying to triage the wounded and establish some semblance of order. Simultaneously, law enforcement was faced with a sprawling crime scene, a massive undertaking to secure and process. The sheer scale of the event presented immediate challenges. Identifying and collecting every piece of potential evidence, from fragments of the bombs themselves to personal belongings scattered in the blast, was a Herculean task. Adding to this complexity was the influx of information, both credible and not, pouring in from witnesses, bystanders, and the media. It was crucial to sift through this deluge and separate fact from speculation. The initial hours and days were a blur of activity, a race against time to piece together what happened and who was responsible. The investigation, as you mentioned, was a massive undertaking. Hundreds of law enforcement officers from various agencies, local, state, and federal, converged on Boston. They worked around the clock, reviewing surveillance footage from businesses and private citizens, combing through social media posts, and conducting countless interviews. One of the early focuses was identifying the two suspects seen in photographs and videos near the finish line shortly before the explosions. These images, released to the public, became pivotal in the manhunt. While the grainy images offered some clues, they also led to several false leads and misidentifications. The pressure to find those responsible was immense, and understandably so. But it also meant that investigators had to be meticulous in verifying every lead to avoid arresting innocent individuals. The early stages were fraught with a mix of hope and frustration as investigators pursued every possible avenue. One aspect that often gets overlooked in these large-scale investigations is the influx of false leads and the emotional toll it takes on everyone involved. Every tip, every potential suspect, represents a flicker of hope, a possible breakthrough. However, when these leads turn out to be dead ends, it can be incredibly deflating, both for investigators and for the public desperate for answers. We saw this play out in the Boston Marathon bombing case, where several individuals were wrongly identified as suspects based on shaky evidence or unreliable witness accounts. These misidentifications not only wasted valuable time and resources, but also subjected innocent people to intense public scrutiny and, in some cases, harassment. It underscores the importance of careful and thorough investigative work, even under immense pressure. Beyond the immediate chaos and the pursuit of leads, there was another layer to this investigation that added a chilling dimension: the taunting communications. While the specifics remain largely undisclosed to protect investigative integrity, we know that there were instances where information, possibly even misleading information, was seemingly leaked or communicated from individuals claiming to have knowledge of the bombings or those involved. These communications, whether genuine or fabricated, added another layer of complexity to the investigation, diverting resources and potentially clouding the already murky waters. Sorting through these communications, assessing their credibility, and determining their intent undoubtedly added to the immense pressure the investigators were already facing. This added element of psychological warfare played a significant role in shaping the narrative and the public's perception of the unfolding events. It's a grim reminder of the challenges law enforcement faces in these high-stakes investigations. The Boston Marathon bombing wasn't just an attack on individuals. It was an assault on the spirit of a city, a community, and a cherished tradition. The emotional scars run deep, far beyond the physical wounds. We've spoken about the immediate aftermath, the chaos and fear, but what about the long-term impact? The survivors, many of whom faced life-altering injuries, grapple with not only the physical challenges, but also the invisible wounds of PTSD, anxiety, and the enduring memory of that horrific day. Many struggle with survivor's guilt, questioning why they lived while others perished. It's a burden they carry every single day, a constant reminder of the tragedy. Absolutely. The ripple effect of this event spread far beyond those directly impacted by the explosions. Families were shattered, left to grieve lost loved ones and navigate the complexities of supporting injured family members. The emotional toll on these families is immeasurable. They had to rebuild their lives while simultaneously dealing with the trauma, the legal proceedings, and the constant media attention. And let's not forget the first responders, the medical professionals, and even the ordinary citizens who witnessed the carnage firsthand. They too carry the emotional weight of that day, the images and sounds forever etched in their memories. The sense of security, of normalcy, was irrevocably shattered for the entire city of Boston. The marathon, once a symbol of athletic achievement and community spirit, became synonymous with tragedy. The city had to confront the reality that even in the midst of a celebratory event, such horrific violence could occur. This realization created a lingering unease, a heightened sense of vulnerability that permeated the community long after the initial shock subsided. The fear of large gatherings, the suspicion of unattended bags, these anxieties became part of the city's collective consciousness. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that Boston has, in many ways, recovered and rebuilt. The Boston Strong motto became a rallying cry, a symbol of defiance and unity. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that the healing process is ongoing, and the emotional scars remain. For many, the anniversary of the bombing brings a resurgence of grief, anxiety, and fear. The sounds of sirens, the sight of crowds, even the smell of certain things can trigger flashbacks and intense emotional distress. These invisible wounds are a stark reminder of the enduring impact of terrorism, not just on individuals, but on entire communities. The investigation, sprawling and complex, started to coalesce around the Tsarnaev brothers. A turning point came with the release of photographs and surveillance videos of the two suspects at the marathon finish line. The images, though grainy, offered the first real glimpse of the individuals responsible for the carnage. The FBI released these images to the public, hoping for a breakthrough in identification. The response was overwhelming, a deluge of tips and leads pouring in. This public engagement, while crucial, also brought forth a wave of misinformation and speculation, further complicating an already intricate investigation. The pressure mounted on law enforcement to sift through the noise and find the truth before another tragedy could occur. The city of Boston held its breath, waiting for answers. The identification of the suspects as Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev sent shockwaves through the community. These weren't shadowy figures from afar. They were individuals who had lived amongst them. Tamerlan, the older brother, was described as a brooding, intense individual with aspirations of becoming a professional boxer. Dzhokhar, the younger, was perceived as more assimilated, a student at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. The contrast between their public personas and the horrific act they were accused of perpetrating created a sense of disbelief and unease. How could these seemingly ordinary young men be responsible for such a devastating attack? The question hung heavy in the air as investigators delved into their backgrounds, searching for a motive, a trigger, an explanation. The days following the release of the Tsarnaev brothers' images were fraught with tension and fear. The manhunt intensified, transforming Boston into a virtual lockdown. Schools and businesses closed, public transportation halted, and residents were urged to shelter in place. The city became a stage for a high-stakes game of cat and mouse between law enforcement and the suspects. Then came the tragic shooting of MIT police officer Sean Collier, allegedly by the Tsarnaevs, further escalating the situation. The subsequent carjacking and pursuit in Watertown turned a quiet suburban neighborhood into a war zone. The exchange of gunfire, the explosions, the sheer chaos of that night gripped the nation, broadcasting the raw reality of the manhunt into homes across the country. The dramatic shootout in Watertown marked a turning point. Tamerlan Tsarnaev, engaged in a fierce firefight with police, was critically wounded, reportedly even run over by his own brother in a desperate escape attempt. He later succumbed to his injuries. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, however, managed to evade capture, disappearing into the darkness. The manhunt continued, even more intense now, focused solely on the surviving brother. The city remained on lockdown, as law enforcement conducted a house-to-house search, determined to bring the remaining suspect to justice. The tension was palpable, the fear tangible, as every shadow seemed to hold a potential threat. The capture of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, hiding in a boat in a Watertown backyard, brought a collective sigh of relief to a city on edge. The long, terrifying ordeal was finally over. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? To consider that these two young men, seemingly integrated into society, harbored such destructive intentions. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, a student at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, blending in with his peers, while Tamerlan, his older brother, frequented the boxing gym and aspired to represent the United States in the Olympics. Their outward appearances gave no indication of the meticulously planned attack they were orchestrating. They moved through their daily lives, interacting with neighbors, classmates, and friends, all while concealing a horrifying plan that would change the lives of thousands forever. This ability of evil to hide in plain sight, masked by normalcy, is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this entire case. It forces us to question how well we truly know those around us, and what darkness might lie beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Absolutely. And the contrast between their public personas and their private actions is stark. We saw images of them at the marathon, seemingly like any other spectators, just hours before the bombs detonated. The surveillance footage of them casually placing the backpacks near the finish line, walking away, almost blending into the crowd, is particularly disturbing. It underscores the calculated nature of their actions and the indifference they displayed towards the human lives they were about to shatter. The fact that they could compartmentalize their actions in this way, separating their public faces from their violent intentions, speaks to a profound disconnect from basic human empathy. It makes one wonder what triggers such a profound shift in individuals, turning them from seemingly ordinary people into perpetrators of such horrific acts. It's a question we grapple with in many of these cases. What combination of factors, ideology, personal grievances, psychological predispositions, culminate in such devastating violence? In the case of the Tsarnaev brothers, the influence of radical Islamic extremism seems to have played a significant role, as evidenced by the materials found on their computers and the pressure cooker bombs they constructed. But the full picture remains complex. Their family background, experiences with immigration and assimilation, and possible feelings of marginalization likely contributed to their radicalization. Unraveling these complex motivations is crucial to understanding not only the specific events of the Boston Marathon bombing, but also the broader phenomenon of homegrown terrorism. And that's where the real challenge lies, isn't it? In trying to understand the why behind these acts. We can meticulously piece together the timeline, analyze the evidence, and follow the investigative trail. But ultimately, the question of what drives individuals to commit such atrocities often remains elusive. In the case of the Boston Marathon bombing, we are left with the chilling realization that evil can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life, disguised as normalcy. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling truth of all. What other seemingly ordinary lives among us harbor similar darkness, waiting for the right moment to emerge? It's a disturbing question that stays with you long after the details of the case fade. Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant. This case remains unsolved. Perhaps the truth is still out there.